Hello, my name is Sridhar Rangayan. I'm the Festival Director of KASHISH Mumbai International Queer Film Festival, which is having its 12th edition right now. So I hope you've seen this beautiful film, Nowhere, directed by David Salazar and Francisco Salazar, and Juan Pablo plays the lead role of Sebastian. So we have these three wonderful people today to talk to us. And doing the interview today, the Q&A, would be Murali Raman, who is a writer, screenplay writer, content creator, artist, short film and art video maker based in Mumbai. He has been on the KASHISH Film Festival Preview Committee for a decade now. He promises not to ask tough questions. so thank you, Murali, for agreeing to host this conversation. So over to you, and let's have a great chat.
Sridhar stole a word I was about to use. The film is extremely beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful film that we saw. And while it touched upon a very, very key issue of the problems of immigrants trying to get a foothold into the United States of America, it also told a story in a very, very evocative manner. To set the groundwork, please do tell us a little about yourselves as directors, David and Francisco.
So we are Colombian Americans born here in the United States. We're first generation Americans. Our parents are both Colombian immigrants. We studied film together at Hofstra University. And then slowly from there, we've been kind of making short films. And Nowhere is our first feature film.
And what kind of films had you been making earlier?
We had concentrated on short films. We had made different types of dramatic short films, and this was our first foray into the immigration topic, and also one of our first explorations of also our Latin American culture as well.
Normally a film has one director, so you're both directed this film and maybe the earlier films as well. How do you divide your work? How do you work that out as a working arrangement?
I mean, we've been really close. We're literally less than a year apart in terms of age. So we've had a really great relationship since we were children. And so we understand each other very well. We understand each other's tendencies. We understand each other emotionally, and we're very open and honest with each other. We also, I mean, we are musicians, but there was a time in our lives where we were very dedicated to playing music, and that kind of requires a certain intuition and a certain understanding and listening to other people to be able to put something together. So I think that in many ways also helped to build our ability to work as a team. And as filmmakers, you run into challenges when you're directing a film because you don't always agree on a lot of things. But my brother and I like I said, we have a very open communication. We're very honest with each other. We trust each other. I think that's the key to our relationship. We trust each other. And yeah, I mean, on set, I think, most people can attest to, we shifted. Sometimes I would take on certain responsibilities and he would take others, and then we would change it back and forth. And maybe some areas he was much more dedicated to, in other areas I was much more dedicated to. But we always kind of found a way to communicate and to work together and to trust each other.
I get where you're coming from, because my younger brother and I are extremely close to each other, though he's just over 2 years, 2.25 years younger to me. But then we went to different areas. I mean, he became a scientist and I went into art. But we still have that level of trust and intuitive understanding, and we keep talking to each other. He lives in Seattle, so distance-wise it's far, but we are pretty close. So if you can encapsulate your filmmaking philosophy in a short thought.
For me as a filmmaker, I want to tell stories that are very much about real situations, real life. I think it's really important to be able to show part of your culture. In our terms right now, we're working a lot with our own Latin American background to be able to show a different aspect of the world that people don't really understand or know. I like to talk about this idea of realism, neorealism that inspires me, especially from a lot of the cinema that comes out of Romania, or the Romanian New Wave. Or I like to also talk about the neorealismists of Italy back in the 1960s, as well as filmmakers like the Dardenne brothers, which I absolutely adore, and those are some of the filmmakers that inspire me when I'm working and writing films. So I think that's the type of cinema that I try to work with at the moment.
like my brother said, we kind of like tend toward much more, we're working a lot within the strictures of Latin American culture right now specifically, and exploring that, and also themes of specifically family, and also kind of the observation of what that means, and what it means to be a part of a family, and those relationships. I think stylistically speaking, we're kind of in flux. I think we're still kind of discovering our approach. We are very much about a handheld camera, keeping the camera close to the characters, being in the environment with their, almost to the point that the camera is a character, observing and living in the space with the other characters. So I think that that's kind of where we have been kind of funneling towards in the last couple of films, including this one and some of our previous shorts. Yeah, I mean, I think we're still very much trying to figure out a lot of things as filmmakers, this being our first feature film. And in talking about our next projects, there is kind of an evolution that builds on what you see in Nowhere, but I think it also kind of expands a little bit, and we're finding our way. We're finding our way, and I don't, who knows what comes next and how that style develops.
You will evolve, you'll know as you go. In this movie, of course, I did notice that I was about to talk about a bit later, the camera being very close to the characters, being part of what was happening on screen. So the viewer is part of what the story per se. So yes, that was coming through pretty well. Since your parents were the immigrants and not you, obviously these were not based on your own personal experiences of immigration, but have you had friends, family who had problems getting citizenship in the US, or I mean, was there any personal experience that you were able to imbue into the film as you went along?
Yeah, I think a lot of this film is based on certain people that we met when we were in college. We studied with a lot of international students, and they wanted to stay after they had graduated. We had one friend from Colombia who did everything. He was trying to get his paperwork, and they told him that he had a couple of options, and one of the options was, for example, an illegal marriage, and that was something that inspired us to actually write part of the script.
One of the things that we set out to do when we wrote the script for this film was we wanted to approach the immigration angle from one that doesn't generally get spotlighted in most mainstream films. People talk a lot about, there's a lot of the idea of illegal immigration or undocumented immigration and people crossing the border and that journey, right? But a lot of the people that are here undocumented in the United States actually come here with their paperwork and they just overstay, right? That's actually a huge percentage of the people that are here undocumented and in the process. So we wanted to actually explore that, and we wanted to explore it also from an angle of people that were closer to our age and people we were seeing every day when we were doing our master's degrees. My wife, for example, she's going through challenges with her immigration transition and things like that. So that continues to be a part of my life. Our parents didn't have the challenges that are related in the film at all, but we did hear about stories about how that process works and the challenges that certain people might have when they don't necessarily get the approval right away or the work visa. I mean, there's just, and then now it's become even more unsteady. It's become more challenging. There are a lot more roadblocks.
Looking at Adrian, you're talking about Adrian, he seems to have a very, very complex characterization from what we could see. There are shades of gray, which is interesting. I could understand his natural reluctance to tell his parents about himself, but did you, or the writer, or all of you together, create Adrian deliberately as a complex character?
When we were writing Adrian, I identified very much with Adrian, because I think that story of coming out, that story of fear, that story of not knowing how to tell his parents and trying to hide is something that I feel like a lot of people deal with. And on top of it, here he's also dealing with an immigration situation. So I think that with that, it's a character that a lot of people can identify with because of that inherent fear that it is to come out, particularly when there's so much taboo behind being gay in a country like Colombia, in Latin America as well.
Everyone in India will relate to that a lot, which is why people are going to really relate to the film at Kashish also.
There's also the added element that Adrian is used to having control. And he's a person that, and when we start the film, does have a certain degree of power over his situation and over his relationship. And it's also in the fact that how he loses that sense of control and how that drives many of his actions, how his fear combined with that also drives a lot of the action. So we kind of wanted to explore the character from a couple of different angles as well, to add to that shades of gray as well.
And you counterpointed him very well with Joan Sebastian, who is much more pliant and they're not very pushing back kind of a partner in the relationship. But going back to Adrian, I didn't like him very much when he asked if, how much money do you want to help us out. I thought that was a bit extreme. I do not know why he said that. Maybe he was desperate. That's one area where he suddenly, I thought, went slightly beyond out of his character, but that's my personal understanding of it. Do you have anything to say about that?
When people are desperate, when people don't like start acting out of desperation, it's when like things that they, there are unlikable things that people end up doing. And I think in this respect, you don't have to love what Adrian does, but I think you might be able to understand his desperation, his fear, in wanting and saying what he says in that point, in that respect.
But I also think that it's one of those things where the subconscious comes to the conscious, right? Where the dark things that you're thinking below the surface, you get to a moment where you just break through that wall and you just spit it out. And I think that, yes, it does kind of put Adrian in a negative light, but at the same time, it spotlights this guy is so afraid of losing everything he has that he's willing to go pretty far. In terms of what how he's going to push this, and that definitely creates mixed feelings. I know that people who've watched the film many people have had very mixed feelings about the character, which I guess in some ways, yes, that's definitely something we wanted to emphasize. Like, this is not such a simple situation. It is not such a simple person, and yeah, we might be able to empathize with someone that we don't necessarily always see eye to eye with.
Coming to Sebastian, very, very lovable character. Performances of both Adrian and Sebastian, beautiful. Let's hear from Sebastian. Tell us something about your understanding of the character.
First of all, thank you for having us. I really love your country, so it's a pleasure to be here with you. And well, about my character, he represents a lot of things of people that have not voice. So he's a Colombian boy who lives in the US and is in contradiction between being with the one that he loves, but also follow his dreams. In the middle of all of these issues, well, he's dealing with also a lot of problems of being an immigrant, but also being part of the LGBTQ community. So my character, for me, is one of the best experiences that I have, because I'm representing a lot of people who feel identified with this story, but we don't have this kind of stories in so many places.
Did you have any problems or any hurdles in playing a gay character?
No, I'm not. I'll also say something that is gonna sound a little bit funny, but I was ready to play this character. I was more worry about to cut my hair or something like that. It's a joke, but I mean, it's normal for me, because I'm just playing a boy who is in love, and I mean, we have to make understand a lot of the people that this is just a love story, and it's normal to be gay. It's normal to feel in love. And also, I'm gonna agree something to this is that this is a love story and a self-love story. So I'm ready to play any character that comes to me.
That came through very well. The unqualified love you have for Adrian in the relationship. I mean, both of you have for each other, in fact. That's an extremely strong bond that carries you through. What is also interesting is your love for working with children, which actually seems to be a very, very strong part of the character of Sebastian, because that's where you end up finding your contentment and peace towards the end. How did you handle that aspect of it? Because talking to the artist on the roadside, that was interesting, and then playing with the children later on.
Well, I think that the scenes with the children shows the essence of the character, and that's one of the things that we learn about this film. That is that you sometimes the place. This is one of my favorite quotes that I use for my character. Is that like something like sometimes the place you are used to is not the place you belong. You belong where you believe you belong.
That's beautiful. Would any of you, David or Francisco, add to that?
Sebastian's character, I mean, from the beginning, I think when we were writing the script, we wanted to kind of show a big contrast between Adrian and Sebastian. And obviously, on some level, Adrian's character tends to be a little bit, we see him as a much more selfish person. And for us, kind of figuring out what was the most selfless thing we could show about Sebastian. And we talked a lot about the fact that he wanted to help children, especially in Colombia. And so that was something that we kind of gradually actually wrote into the story. And I know that, Juan Pablo on set had a really amazing relationship with all the children that were in both of the scenes that he had to interact with children. It was a natural. It was very easy to film. I mean, my brother was in the room with them with the camera. It was improvised. The scene where they're doing the little play work, it was completely improvised.
He comes across as a very innocent child himself, actually.
Yeah. There is an innocence to him that contrasts Adrian for sure. And we wanted to kind of build that idea of, what happens in the stories is Adrian loses control and kind of descends in a way toward a darker aspect of himself. Sebastian takes more control over his life and he moves in the opposite direction. He makes choices that put him first, that put put his goals first, instead of subjugating himself necessarily to everything that Adrian wants. And that's where kind of the conflict had to come in with the story.
There's something else I wanted to know. You might not be too aware, but in India, what happens is when a gay character is played, especially in a film, the character is normally stereotyped as, a particular kind of stereotype, which has happened in certain international films as well. I think that's what Juan Pablo was referring to when he said, I was only worried about curling my hair or something, and rather than acting, I think.
I want to actually add on to what you just said about that. When we were trying to make the film in Colombia and we were working and finding producers and, collaborators, there was actually one point where, and my brother was on the phone, he was in the US, I was in Colombia, we met with a couple of producers. They had read the script and they said, and I quote, that we want the film to be gayer. And I didn't know what that meant. I asked them what that meant. And they were literally looking for a more stereotyped approach to the characters. They had a certain aesthetic that they wanted to see from the characters, something that my brother and I both found very insulting, because the whole idea of the story was that we wanted to explore this. We didn't want to go the stereotype route. And this is in Colombia too, where when we made this film, there were very few LGBTQ films being made. So we were going to be going into a situation where people weren't exposed to the films, and the exposure they did have was very stereotyped. So we wanted to push away from that. And that we came out of that meeting and we didn't want anything to do with these producers. But they literally said to us, Sebastian should, like, the way that they were describing what the character should be wearing and what they should look like was embarrassing to listen to.
Well, they also wanted a specific, to be more, they wanted a rainbow aesthetic. And I think that when I look at that, it comes from the stereotypes that our culture has put on the gay character. Before maybe 2 years ago, on a telenovela in Latin America, the gay character would always be the fashionista, or always be like super like colorful, which is, is not a bad thing, but it always became that stereotype. And for us, it was really important not to show to show that a gay couple, there's so many ways of being a gay person and a gay couple. There's so many different colors and different forms. So that was really something that was really important, because to this day, even when in Colombia, when you have on TV a gay couple, it's like a controversy that two men are kissing. And for me, that's kind of like, it should be something that's normalized, and something that people should see as something that happens because it's a normal thing, and it's something that we need to normalize in our society and in the world.
And I have to agree that that's one of the things that works with this film, because as I said before, anyone can feel identified because it's just a love story. no matter if you are part of the LGBTQ community, because you can feel identified because everyone loves. That's it.
Both your character and Adrian's came through as what would know people, what would not be considered a stereotype. And it's not just in Latin America or Colombia that we have the stereotypes, it's all over the world, especially in India where there are much more strictures perhaps. I mean, we've only finally now managed to decriminalize homosexuality, but still there's so much of stigma over there, so much of standardization of what a gay person should be like or behave. So in that sense, our festival, KASHISH Queer Film Festival, basically also we choose a lot of films that get this message across that being queer is normal, you know. It's as normal as being not queer, you know. So actually, people who are not queer is just the other kinds over there. I wish you people come to one of our physical brick and mortar festivals whenever the pandemic goes away, and it's like a pride festival in a cinema theater. So that's a message that you're bringing across very strongly through this film and through the characterizations. Well, you have what is normally considered a beard in many places in the form of Steph, but then she's a good friend to them, and I think she performs a very, very important role over there, being supportive of both of them, in fact. So she is something like a conscience to both Adrian and Sebastian, because she tries to look at themselves, look at their own thought process, ask them why what is happening to them is happening to them. In fact, I often wish she had a greater, stronger role, but then you have a framework to work within. Can you say something more about Steph there?
Yeah, I think as Natalie, who plays Steph, has always said, she's kind of like that conscience, as you say. She's that person who is a good friend, and because she's a good friend, she will tell them straight up what she thinks, how she thinks, and how they should act. Stephanie doesn't say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to marry him." No, she tells them straight up, "I'm not going to do this." And in the case of Sebastian's character, Stephanie basically tells him, "You have to do what you have to do to be happy," and that's what a good friend does. Basically, it tells him how straight up how things should be and how she feels, and that's why she's such a crucial part of these two characters, and is such a crucial part in helping Sebastian find himself, and also in many ways Sebastian breaking free from doing what Adrian wants throughout.
Yeah, that's very true. Wake up, smell the coffee, and he does that actually, Colombian coffee, which he makes it very badly. I love that little touch of Adrian's mom not liking the coffee. That was beautiful. So another thing that was very, very striking about the film was the cinematography. What was the plot line behind the cinematography? What was the creative graph behind it, the design of it?
So we worked with Jose Silva. He's a cinematographer. He has his own company called La Colonia Films, and with him it was a fascinating process because we talked through he literally came to our apartment in Bogota, and we sat with him for a week, and we created what we called a Bible, a visual Bible, the rules that we were going to use throughout the film, and the kind of things that we were going to establish visually. And obviously, like I mentioned before, one of the things was we were going to keep the camera handheld for the most part, except for the couple of exceptions. We were going to keep it close to the characters so that we felt like we were in the space with them. Jose also liked to employ a lot of this idea of shadows throughout, because obviously these characters, and specifically Adrian, are hiding. And we wanted to kind of employ that aspect. A lot of their nighttime scenes together, there's a very big emphasis on shadows and on covering themselves up. There's the scene where they're rolling around in bed joking about, Sebastian wants him to tell his parents, and he's talking about how he's pregnant and all that, and he hides himself under the covers, and there's a lot of shadow play going on in that scene. And Jose was like what was great about him was he was very sensitive to those things. He was, in many ways we mapped out the shots, but he was also following the actors. He was very present with the actors. I know Juan Pablo and Miguel loved working with him because they felt that he was attuned to what they were doing. You know, it allowed Miguel, Juan Pablo, all the actors a certain freedom in the space. And I think that we definitely owe that to the Jose's flexibility and his eye. I mean, his sense of, you know, timing and freedom.
One element I noticed was the subway seems to be a recurring motif. Was that by design?
We wanted to keep something that was linked to New York visually. So the subway is obviously a very evocative thing of New York City. And speaking about New York and speaking about not showing things in the traditional manner, when we were shooting in New York and we were planning on how we wanted to shoot New York, we wanted to make sure we didn't want to go to the typical Times Square or the famous iconic places. We wanted to kind of show New York like a person that lives in New York would see New York, right? I live in the city. I live in Washington Heights. I don't necessarily go to the touristy places ever, unless, you know, for a very specific reason. So someone that lives in New York would probably not be hanging out in Times Square on their off time or hanging out in touristy areas. So we wanted to kind of explore it that way. And obviously the subway allowed us to have like a definition of this is New York that people will recognize. Also, the sound of the subway is very noisy and very, you know, in a way chaotic and uncomfortable. Like so, you know, there are a couple of moments in the film where we wanted to kind of add that, to maybe add a little bit of the texture and I mean, when in our original ideas for the sound design, I don't necessarily think that it all came through. There was this kind of idea of the sound of New York overpowering them a little bit gradually as the conflict built. But yeah, I think that was one of the things that did definitely stay within the final film.
Okay, so when you come to the denouement, when Adrian goes back to Colombia and he drives over, watches Sebastian at playing the children, what makes him change his mind? You know, it seemed abrupt, but it's obviously been working on his mind. That's the reason he's gone back to an extent. But can you tell us something about that?
Well, I think when Adrian goes back to his family, he realizes, you know, for example, with his parents, he still has a lot of work to do with his parents. And, you know, when he goes and sees Sebastian, he sees Sebastian really happy with the kids and right there. And I think, you know, I think he realizes he can't drag Sebastian back into this world again. That's why he leaves. He realizes that he's not going to make Sebastian happy because he first has to work on himself. And that's why we see him at the end, you know, thinking and meditating and you know, say what you will. He still has a lot to process and to work through his own issues before he can really honestly go back and have a boyfriend or have another relationship and make sure that that relationship is successful. Because if you think about it, part of the reason why his relationship with Sebastian doesn't work is because he has so much baggage that he's carrying, so many things that he has to work out with himself before he can actually really be happy. As much as he might love Sebastian, he'll only do more damage to Sebastian if they go back together.
And he realizes that Sebastian is at that point in his life that he wants to get to, but he's not there. Like my brother said, he still has a lot of things he needs to work on his own, and he doesn't want to drag him back into that. And I think that's why he leaves at the end.
And that's when you start loving Adrian again as audience. I had a question which I think that's not very relevant. Were there any autobiographical elements anywhere in the film, in any aspect?
I think there's autobiographical elements in many aspects, particularly in that when we were writing the script, I know that I put my own elements of my own life, my own experiences. I know that my brother also put his elements of his old relationships as well, and I think we combined those with some stories of immigration from our friends, and we put it all into the film. I don't think there's a specific
like mainly broad strokes. Yeah, I don't think there's like anything I can point to like a specific scene and say that came out of my life.
It's sort of seeped into it. Yeah.
Yes, right, exactly. Right. And, like I was saying, there's nothing specific, but there's a lot of things ideas that I think we put into it that really allowed us to create what we created.
Quick jump to Juan Pablo. What about the intimate scenes? There are a fair number of them. Was it intimidating for you to act in them?
No.
No, good. That's all you're going to say? Say something more.
No. I mean, I think that everything was so prepared, and David and Francisco, they are so passionate with their work, and all the people involved in the project was doing everything with love. So I think that everything works. I have not like a bad experience because everyone was working in their own things, in their own stuff. I mean, and that helps you as an actor to create with freedom.
Yeah, I think that was one of the most relaxed days on set. I think there was a lot of tension built into guilt into going to get into those scenes, but then when we actually shooting them, once everyone got really comfortable, and I think it was a pretty relaxed environment once we got going on those scenes.
Is there anything else you'd like to add in terms of messaging? Where we started off at the beginning about wanting to talk about the LGBTQ community and the difficulties and hurdles that queer people have in getting across to their message to the world. That's one aspect of it. And have you participated in other film festivals worldwide?
To answer the first part, and then I'll get to the second part, I think it's really important to show gay characters on screen, particularly, in the case of this film is a Colombian American film, and there were not so many gay characters in Colombian films or gay films in Colombia. So right now, this film was super important because the more you see yourself on screen, the more you can identify with them, the more you feel more comfortable in your skin, the more, parents and other people see it, and they can also say, oh, that can happen. Or it's the type of thing that you want to show, so that those experiences, we can stop creating taboos over those experiences, and we can continue to move forward and normalize things, because there's nothing wrong with who you are. Ultimately, everybody comes from the same exact place, and we're all equals. And that's something that's really important when you show a film like this, whether it's in Colombia or in India or in other countries where it's still a taboo, where it's still illegal to be gay.
Yes.
So that for us has been really a great experience that we were able to show this in Colombia. It came out in theaters in Colombia, so that was also something that was very wonderful for us. And yeah, I mean, this is going to be our 14th festival. We've shown in Italy, in Canada, in Colombia, as I said, and in the US we've shown it a couple of times as well. So we've been working this film through.
What were any specific reactions to the film at these festivals?
I think Juan Pablo can tell, because he was in Colombia when the movie came out.
Tell us.
Yeah, well, thanks to the pandemic, we have the opportunity to screen the film in national television. And in my case, I was a little bit nervous, but that's what I was saying. That the best part of this is that maybe we were worried about how people watch the LGBTQ community, but at the end, all the people was interested about it, and I feel that a lot of people could expand their horizons, ambitions, and that's one of the best parts of being in this kind of stories, or have this kind of spaces like your festival, because we are expanding the horizons and the vision of everyone to know that these kind of stories are real and are happening all the time. So you have to understand that it's normal, and as I said before, you can feel identified because it's just a love story. So the best part of being in Colombia and cinemas and television is that a lot of people understand that it's a normal story, and everyone was really interested about to know more about how we film this film, more than what is a story about two boys, because it's just a story about two people who love each other but have to make a lot of decisions.
You talked about your horizons expanding thanks to exposure at film festivals. What are you planning to do next? What's coming up as a performer, as an actor?
Now, I'm also like to write a lot of things. There are some things coming that I'm really happy that, but because of the situation of the country and the pandemic, I have to be patient. So this is I'm learning to be patient, but I know that there's a lot of things coming. So I hope that you can know about this soon. And well, I'm ready for everything. As I said
We
before.
look forward to that. All the best to you on that.
To do a lot of characters different from me. So
yeah, that's what a performer does. You get into the skin of the character and carry to the audience what you perform. So David and Francisco, thanks a lot for this, for your time and for this rather in-depth look into the film. Do you have any closing words about the film and how you'd like the film to be seen in more markets, and how you want it projected? Because I'm sure in India, this is a kind of film that brings in a lot of hope, a lot of positivity, which is much needed for the community. So any words from you?
I just want to first of all thank the festival for having us. It's an honor to be able to show the film in India, a country which, as Juan Pablo said, we absolutely love, and there's so much creativity that goes into it, so, that comes out of India. So we're just really happy to be able to show it here.
We hope that I mean, one of the things that's come from the film that happened in the screening in Colombia, and we had a remarkable experience in Florida as well, when the three of us went to the film festival, is that after the screening, we had a very in-depth conversation with some of the people that watched the film, and they were able to open up to us about personal experiences and challenges that they had as well. And that was a beautiful thing. And I think that if anything, I hope that this film allows people to have the conversation, that allows people to feel that they can open up about who they feel comfortable with, who they are, and have those conversations. And if it serves as a means of as a teaching moment, if you will, that's beautiful as well. I think that cinema, the importance of cinema and film in art is that it allows us to have conversation. It encourages it, and it encourages to challenge dated, old-fashioned norms and taboos that shouldn't exist anymore. So hopefully this film contributes to that in some way, and we hope that people connect with these characters, and yes, that would be my hope for this film.
Perfect. I mean, when I describe it as a beautiful, beautiful film, it's also because it touches you. It touches your heart, and it connects. People are able to connect with the story that you are telling. So that has come through very well. And thank you very much for the film, and thank you for making the film so that we can see the film in India.
All right. Thanks a lot for this wonderful conversation. David and Francisco, really happy to be screening your film, and hope our audiences enjoyed watching the film. And Juan Pablo, really happy to have you. You're so charming and so natural. So fantastic. But I have one question for you. You basically are based in Colombia, right? How was your experience of shooting in New York?
Well, my first time in New York. So I really enjoy everything about this place, because well, when you are doing when you are watching a film, it's like if you are dreaming. But also when I was filming in nowhere, I was dreaming all the time. I cannot believe it. I still not believe it. So it was one of the best experience, one of the wonderful experience for my life.
All right, so that's awesome, and thank you, Murali Raman, for hosting this wonderful Q&A with very, very incisive questions and an understanding of the film, and very
pleasure.
Thanks a lot. Really appreciate this. Please, this particular Q&A, which is being shown on YouTube and Facebook, please put your comments if you have any for the directors and the actors, and I'll make sure that I see that and respond to your comments on YouTube and Facebook. And there's still one more week of Kashish still remaining. So please go to mumbaiquarefest.com, and you can still buy a weekend pass to register for Kashish. And we have like 5 more days of festival happening after this weekend ends. So please go and register yourself, and don't forget to come and join the closing ceremony, the award ceremony. So thanks a lot. Really appreciate all of you joining in. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.